Good morning, Coolest Coast. It's time for Coffee on the Coast. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Coffee on the Coast. I'm your host today, Tina Prigge, welcoming to the show Tim Gadzinski and Steph Peters, Manitowoc Public Library. So good to see you both.
Good morning.
Good to see you as well.
I have to admit, my cheeks are already aching because right before we went live, we were sharing so many stories. I've already been laughing and smiling so hard. And that's just a precursor to what we're planning to talk about, which is happening tomorrow. Tales from the Taprrom, a StorySlam Evening at Petskull Brewing. Okay, what is this? Tell us everything.
Steph, do you want to start off or should I take it? How do you want to do this?
Go for it, Tim.
Okay, so this was something that we started pre-pandemic at Courthouse Pub that Steph actually found out. I thought she showed up randomly, but she was actually stalking me, like mildly, in a very positive way, because she heard we were doing a story slam, and Steph was still living in Atlanta at that time. But she was home visiting her folks, and she heard we were doing this, and she was really involved with the story slam scene in Atlanta.
Oh, so this is a thing. This is not just something invented in Manitowoc.
Oh, no. It's been around, for a while. I mean, the Moth Radio Hour is probably the best known manifestation, and that's been on, what, Steph, at least a decade, if not
at least, yeah.
So Steph, what is a story slam? What does that mean?
It is an opportunity for people to tell a true life story about themselves. Something they've experienced. There's usually a theme. Our theme tomorrow is Love is in the Air in honor of springtime. But that can be interpreted very broadly. Maybe you have a love affair with board games, or you really had a terrible first date or online dating. It doesn't have to be romantic love. It can be interpreted as broadly as you want. You tell a 5-minute or less true life story about yourself. No notes, just get out there and share something just like you do with friends, but you're on stage with a microphone. It's wonderful, and it's a great way to get to see other people's lived experiences and hear things that you relate to, hear things that shock you, you laugh, you cry. I have just had the best experiences at storytelling events.
And what's the protocol? When you hear somebody's story, do you snap after?
No. It's not a beatnik affair per se. I mean, you could snap. We're not anti-snap, are we? I don't think we're anti-snap at all. But no, I mean, it's just you get your 5 minutes. You can't use notes. It's not stand-up. It can't have happened to someone else. It needs to have happened to you. And you tell your story, and with about 30 seconds left, if it sounds like your story isn't concluding, I will flash a flashlight to let you know you have 30 seconds to a minute. It's blinding. I know it knocks people over. It's miraculous that anyone tells stories. But all it is just a little visual reminder that you need to start wrapping up. But it's not terribly hardcore if you go 30 seconds over. It's not like the world's going to end. But the people respond. It's hard to describe. It's just a very genuine, relatable human response. And one thing that's really great about it, I find, is that it builds community without being heavy-handed about building community. People get to know that it reinforces commonality as opposed to differences, which I believe is so just drastically important this day and age.
It's the foundation of community almost.
Yeah.
Steph, what do you love about it?
Everyone understands that it takes some vulnerability to get up on stage. And so I have just found that audiences are appreciative that you tried, whether your story really brings it home or not. I've been in rooms where people are professional storytellers. Their livelihood is literally going around and leading storytelling workshops. And I've been in rooms where someone's never told a story before and they get up there and they're nervous, and people are equally enthusiastic to hear all of it because it's just, like Tim said, a beautiful human connection moment.
So the crowd is supportive. Nobody's carrying tomatoes, cabbages, anything like that, right?
Yes. And if you want to come tomorrow and just listen, come and do that. And maybe you'll, halfway through decide you want to put your name on the list, and we welcome that as well.
Oh, good. So let's review that. So you don't have to pre-register.
No, not at all. Registration starts at, the event itself starts at 6:00. We'll be there at 5:30. All you need to do is give your name and like a 2 or 3 word synopsis of what your story entails, just so that we can bring you to the stage. And really that's as involved as the sign-up process is.
And no cost to participate?
Oh, no, none whatsoever. And like Steph said, You can just come to watch,
Spectate?
listen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. That's part of community.
yeah, and honestly, this is the second one that we're doing at Petskull. The first one was a couple months ago, and there were just some scheduling conflicts. Initially, it worked out. Steph couldn't be there for the original second date that we had, but fortunately, there was a conflict, so we had to push it. And Steph can be here now and co-host with me, which is fantastic. But last time there were a lot of people who weren't there at Petskull for the Story Slam who wound up staying and listening, and some of them participated. There was this one person there who was just dead set against the idea. He didn't even understand. It's like, why would anyone want to listen to stupid stories about embarrassing yourself? And then 2 stories in, he was like the biggest fan of the room. He stayed the entire time. He didn't tell a story, but he loved just listening to the stories. And he was texting the people that he was there with who had left how dumb they were for having left because it was so much fun.
Converts on the spot. That's pretty cool.
Yes.
It's really easy because, it is like just telling stories with your friends that like Steph said, except you're on stage with a microphone. But once you get rolling with the story, you don't really even notice it.
Okay, so the theme this time is love is in the air.
Correct.
Yes. Can you give us a little example of a story? Like, do you each have a story you can share?
Well, I can give one that I've told it a couple times because it was in the paper. But when I was 5 years old, there was a little blonde-haired girl who lived up the block from me. And one time I was over at her house and we were playing in the basement, and she asked me to kiss her. And I thought, well, even with my vast experience at age 5, she seemed a little wild. So I said no. And her response was to grab a one wood out of her father's golf bag and bash me over the head with a driver. So as a result, I've been very leery to say no if someone asks for a kiss.
It's propositioned. You're like, keep the wood, keep the wood.
I just don't want to get hit in the head with a golf club again.
That is awesome. Thank you. Okay, see, that was easy. That was fun. Steph, you have a story?
I do, but I'm going to leave it as a teaser because I've got it all prepared for tomorrow. And it's a little vulnerable, but I'm excited to share it. So,
that isn't the story I'm telling tomorrow. By the way, that's kind of like my preview story. But
Tim's got a lot more torrid romances that he can pull from than I do. So.
Oh gosh, I wish I didn't. That's all I have to say. But,
spoiler alert: I was that little 5-year-old blonde girl down the road.
Oh, full disclosure. Yeah, I know you've got a lot of torque. You have a lot of torque. But yesterday, if you don't mind, can I bring up another media show on your show, Tina?
Sure. Was it when you were on WFRV 5?
Yeah, I was on Local 5.
Awesome,
Local
by
5.
the way.
It was so much fun, and I didn't plan this at all. They asked me to come on and talk about 5 books that people needed to know about.
I can't wait to read Shadow Divers, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Well, they didn't tell me it was a Mother's Day theme. Yeah, that would have been nice to know. But because, I brought up Stiff, which is a book about cadavers.
Such a good book, it's
good book.
It's a great book, but it's like, I don't know if I would have brought it up on Mother's Day. Father's Day, sure. But Mother's Day, I wasn't so sure about.
Mothers have a sense of humor and appreciation for good literature.
Well, but cadavers? It's not usually part of brunch. It's
Okay,
not what you think of as a brunch topic. But Lisa and Melaine decided that they were going to tell brief stories on the show. And one of them told a story about a bad date at a Pizza Hut. And the other one was about a theater reunion where she wound up being many more people's first kiss than she anticipated. But they were all great. And they were just, where'd Steph go?
Oh, no, we lost Steph. Steph, come back.
Steph. But it's just really everyone has a story. That's the thing.
Can I share my story as a little appetizer?
Yes, of course.
So back in the early days of Google, I first met Jason, who's my husband, love of my life, right? And I met him and I knew within 10 minutes. And I was so excited and I was telling my parents. Early days of Google, my dad Googles him. He's like, Tina, I Googled him and I was like, oh no, what's going to show up? Is it like, was he in prison or something awful? Like I was preparing my heart to like learn some awful news. And he turns his computer screen around and it's a picture of Jason in like paint covered clothes, painting this huge mural. And the word he was painting in the photo was love.
Oh, wow.
And I knew at that moment, I'm like, yep, that's it. I'm in. It was just the perfect confirmation.
How cool. And that's what.
Hi, Steph.
Welcome back, Steph.
Computer chose to restart. I apologize.
Technology is great when it works.
Yeah.
It's why we can't trust AI to do everything, right? Because
well, what can we trust it to do?
I could help you write a haiku, maybe. I don't know. I haven't even tried it for that.
Come on, that's so few syllables. You need an AI for that? I think we prove weekly that you don't need AI to write haikus. But,
nice.
But that's a great story, and it's funny, just because it's super relatable in that everyone expects the horror story. The father always finding out the horrible thing.
Yeah, warning the daughter. Yep.
Yeah, Mara's dad didn't know anything about me, and he thought the worst things about me. Honestly, and then he found out I knew a lot about art history, and his opinion changed on the spot. And it's just very weird how fathers have this preconceived notion about their baby, who should be with their baby girls. And I get it. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I like your story. I mean, that's what's great. Story.
Hey, do you have a story about this adorable alpaca that's in your shot?
Well, do you really want to hear the story about the alpaca? I mean, I'll tell you the story. Okay, so the story was one night I had a dream that Paul Hoffman at Petskull and I, this was a couple years back, had decided to create a new restaurant venture, which was called Uptown Alpacas. And in the grassy area by Petskull, there was going to be a pen of alpacas, and much like a lobster tank in a seafood restaurant in Maine, you'd get to go and pick your alpaca and it would be freshly prepared for you. And the slogan for Uptown Alpacas was not for petting, but for eating. And this was in my dream, and I remember it with utter clarity. And I thought Karen Hansen, who I work with at the library, would find this funny, and I was not wrong. She found it very funny. She initially created a logo for me for Uptown Alpacas on the Glowforge here that says not for petting but for eating. And then she found this picture of an alpaca somewhere and gave it to me just as a random gift. And I always say, if they need a sponsor, if they're light on sponsorship for anything in the summer reading programs, that Uptown Alpacas would gladly sponsor that program.
Well, thanks for showing us just how easy it is to share a story. And you yourselves can share a story at StorySlam Evening, Tales from the Taprrom. This is happening at Petskull Brewing, Thursday, May 8th. Starts at 6 p.m. No registration is required. There is no fee to participate. You must be 21 or older. The theme is Love is in the Air. So you can talk about good dates, bad dates, unforgettable romantic experiences, love of alpacas, whatever you feel comfortable telling the audience.
Right. Or about how your love for cheese interfered with you finding your true love as a human. For example. No, but like Steph said, it can be love of anything. Just use that as a jumping off point. And it can be about interactive human love, or it can be, even love for your pet. I mean, there's just endless possibilities on what you can talk on. And you don't have to name names. We're not.
Better if you don't, probably.
Yeah, maybe so. Well, I'm going to tell a story about my wife, so I will name her name because she'll be there, and it would be odd if I use generalities with her in the room. But and it's also from any age, any time in your life. It doesn't have to be current.
Right. When you were 5, for example, that was a great story.
Yeah.
Hey, Steph, do you have any words of encouragement for somebody that might want to participate?
Well, encouragement, yes. I mean, I just give it a try. I think, every year I set up for myself, I want to do something outside my comfort zone, just slightly, because that's where you get the most growth, and this is a great opportunity to just dip your toe in the water. Again, it'll be an understanding audience. Give it a shot, or at the very least, come participate. I want to point out that it is at a brewery, but Petskull is very inclusive. There are plenty of non-alcoholic options. I believe there are food options. Yep. So don't feel any pressure that way. And a word of advice Tim's heard me give is you think a lot about your opening line when you tell a story, but it's equally important, if not more so, to think about your closing line. Because in my history, I've definitely gone up there and had this wonderful story that ends with, so like, yeah, that happened. And it just ruins the whole thing. So spend some time thinking about how you want to finish, because that really that differentiates a good story from a great story.
Just like gymnastics, you want to stick the landing.
Stick the landing, exactly. And also think about your entire routine. If we're going to use the gymnastics metaphor, you want to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Outline it, trace your story, what it's going to be, so you don't surprise yourself. In 5 minutes, you'll be shocked when you just talk through your story. 5 minutes is not that much time. It goes by really quickly. It may seem like an eternity. And like Steph said about if you're a first timer, dive into the pool, because I would say the majority of the people that were at the StorySlam event the first time were first time storytellers. And the audience was incredibly supportive, even though Petskull is, known for kind of being a bit raucous. And that's definitely, I'm a big fan of the shenaniganing that goes on there. But what was great was that even if people weren't there to hear the stories, when people started telling their stories, everyone started paying attention. So it's a very supportive and conducive atmosphere. It works really well. So give it a go.
It's a great reason for a night out.
Great way to meet people too. In Atlanta, I really found that to be a great community. I would start, sometimes I'd bring a friend, sometimes I'd go by myself, but it's such an easy thing. You listen to a story, you can turn to the person next to you and be like, wow, there's a connection right there immediately. A lot of the people come regularly. I was telling Tim, I've had some pretty big health challenges in my life. And after having been in the storytelling group for a while, mostly as a spectator, quite frankly, I was homebound for quite a few years, and they brought the storytelling to my backyard, set up a stage, set up the chairs, and did story at Steph's, just so that I could continue to be included. Aww. And that was just from dipping my toe in the water, attending something I saw on a calendar, and something really beautiful came of it. So we're excited to bring this to Manitowoc too.
Yeah.
How beautiful, you guys. Thank you for joining us today to tell us about it. One last reminder to viewers, Tales from the Taprroom, a StorySlam evening at Petskull Brewing is happening tomorrow, Thursday, May 8th, 6 p.m. No registration, no fee required, ages 21 plus. It sounds like it's going to be a great time. My guests today, Tim Gadzinski and Steph Peters, Manitowoc Public Library. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Tina.
I'm your host, Tina Prigge, signing off for this episode of Coffee on the Coast. We'll see you next time. Bye.